Teresa seen it yet?
I sent it to everybody.
I did.
Yeah, I went by email.
Yeah.
It's just a discussion today. I just wanted to bring it to everybody
We
and
talked
chat.
about this during the census, because the census doesn't have to follow these guidelines. It's not a solicitation in the same way.
Yeah, I don't know if census would, we can talk about what falls. I think it's more selling stuff. That's kind of my view, that he brought up some things, but
The first little bit's pretty clear.
yeah. Okay, you ready,
Right,
Chair?
absolutely.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thanks.
Oh, it's really good.
We'll have to turn that lower.
Nothing.
Is everybody taking a coffee break all of a sudden? We were getting some feedback.
We're getting some feedback, so we have to wait just a moment.
I've got some feedback for you too.
You always do, Matt. You always do.
Close. Close that.
I think so.
Oh, no, it's the same
Same
thing.
thing.
It's recording.
Okay, recording.
It's what he said.
Repeating.
Now it's
Did he?
recording.
Okay.
It's the feedback.
We're good. We were hearing our YouTube live stream
Okay, that's what it was.
Oh, okay.
in the form of an echo.
Can you hear us now, Matt?
Yep.
Okay,
Great.
Madam Chairwoman.
All right, let's call to order the Philomath Police Committee. Today's date is Wednesday, June 14th, 2022. It is 4:02 in the afternoon. Yeah, we'd like to start off by doing those in attendance via Zoom. Matt Lehman, Councillor Biscoe is here, Chris Workman, myself, Teresa Nielsen, and Chief Ken Rubin. First order of business is approval of the minutes. Let's start with the last meeting on April 19th of 2022. I know the notes say April 20th, but actually we met on the 19th.
I've already corrected.
April 19th, that's been corrected. So do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Lehman. Thank you so much. And I'll second that. If we could have a vote to approve those minutes, all in favor? Right. All right, that's unanimous. All of us voted accordingly. We also have to approve, apparently back in August 10th of 2021, the minutes were not approved. So we will need to approve the minutes from August 10th of 2021.
And I know everybody wasn't there, but you can approve them.
Okay, we can approve them.
yeah.
So I'll move that we approve the minutes from August 10th of 2021. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, perfect. A vote, all in favor of approving the minutes from August 10th of 2021, please so indicate.
Aye.
That's two,
I will abstain.
one abstain.
Okay.
All right, so both of those motions will pass with only one abstaining from the August. We will now turn our time over to Police Committee business, to our Chief Rubin.
Okay, so talk about this a lot, and I just think it's really important that you guys know and understand the accreditation process. And the reason being is because about 20 different reasons, but the 2 or 3 main reasons are, number one, when the public ask about oversight of the department. Some big departments have big oversight boards where they review all different kinds of things. Most agencies in Oregon, minus 2 or 3, rely on the Oregon Accreditation Alliance that regularly review us, and we're required to provide documents and proof that we're complying with a little over 200 state standards that have been passed down to police agencies that are part of the accreditation process. But then we also have on-site reviews, and then every 3 years we have a full audit of our whole operation. And in the past, what we've done is everything was handwritten in hand. That's what I want to use here. All the documentation was just paper documents that we had to provide in folders to the accreditation reviewers that are coming out. And now we use an electronic system for the first time. It's called Power DMS. And I wanted to show you just a couple examples and then take questions about the process and try to explain it more in depth of what I have to do as the chief to show compliance with the accreditation. So it's not, a lot of people think accreditation, some accreditation groups around the world are very rubber stamp. Hey, I signed up, I give you this money and I get this accreditation seal of approval or whatever. But I wanted to show you what it takes to actually do Oregon. I'm on the accreditation. I have to give you my spiel here. I'm on the board for the Oregon Accreditation Alliance and have been for a long time. I'm actually the chair of the Police Chiefs Accreditation Committee. And one of my roles is to review new standards as they come up. And we go over all the standards several times a year to make sure that they're in compliance with new state and federal laws. For instance, and you guys, some of you knew because you were on the committee last year. So if the legislature changes the law on use of force, let's say they say, okay, now you have to have 4 hours of training every year on a taser, which I'm making that up. We already have that training, but just say they come up with a new, we would have to implement that into a standard that's overseen by this commission and require agencies to show proof that the officers have that 4-hour training every year or whatever the time frame requires. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the accreditation process typically is, well, how do you prove that you're doing something right? It's not as easy as it sounds sometimes. And the way they make us prove it is by documented instances. Luckily for us, everything we do, we have body cam video for, which is great. That makes it way easier. But then we also have to provide for all of our standards written documentation that is scanned and put into the system that I'm going to show you here in a minute. For instance, on the use of force, if it says the officer shall write a complete police report and a use of force report if they use these types of force. Well, in that accreditation standard, that in that section, I would have to find a police report that we've really done in real life, scan that in, outline the sections in that report where the officer wrote that what he did and didn't do, and then highlight the standard that it applies to in the accreditation process, so that a reviewer, when they come to do a review, they look up our use of force in the computer system, pull up the documents, and the police reports and the photographs or the body cam video, whatever we put in the system, to review to make sure that if we use force on this incident here, did we use it the right way? Did it match what really happened in real life or not? And was it documented properly and who oversaw it? And then going on further onto that, I'm using the use of force as an example because it's a pretty in-depth section, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here in a second. One of the things we're required to do that we're not required in city rules or anything else is to provide documentation to the FBI on use of force. So that's a state standard in the accreditation standard that we're required to report all of our use of force to the FBI, and they keep a database of that to hopefully root out if we have, it doesn't happen in a small agency because we see it. Let's say you have a 10,000 person agency. If one person's using force all the time, how do you see that? How do you recognize there's a pattern of poor behavior? Well, one of the ways you do it is through a tracking process. The FBI has a tracking system that I have to log into every month and put all of our uses of force into that system. So that's a standard that's required by the accreditation process in the state of Oregon. Another one is that every year I have to have a meeting with my supervisors, which is Dave, and a member of the union. So we get a person from the union and we have a meeting and we go over every single use of force from that previous year. The police report, we watch the video of the officer engaging it with the suspect. And then what we do is we write a report to him. I keep it in my office. I have copies if you guys ever want to see them. That says, hey, we looked at these 9 instances over the year and they all complied with department policy, or on this one here, the officer should have used, more verbal commands before he did XYZ. And we recommend that during our next training, we highlight verbal commands, or we highlight the use of a taser as opposed to the use of, tackling him or whatever. Just making something up as I go there. But we make a recommendation. We do that for use of force, pursuits, and several other items where we actually have to meet every year, go over all those incidents, and then write a report. We do that same thing for evidence. We have an evidence review every year. We have to have monthly inspections of the evidence room. We have to have a yearly audit of the room. And then we also have to have one surprise I call it a search, a surprise review from an outside agency. So all the agencies around here, we all are accredited. So like pretty soon I'll call up Benton County, hey, I'm coming next Tuesday to review, and I go into their evidence room and I say, that bin right there, I want to know everything that's in that bin and show me the computer documentation and all the documents about all the evidence in that particular bin. So they get the bin down, they go, I can't tell them ahead of time. They do the same to me. They'll show up and say, okay, I want to look at the cache that you have in the cache evidence safe that we have in the office. So I'll have to get all the cache out that are all individually packaged. I go on the computer, I run a report of what's in that safe, print it out for that person, and then we itemize audit every single item in the cache safe. So it depends. We do a cache audit every year, ourselves, a weapons audit, and we also do a gigantic one, which nobody else does, but we're small enough to be able to do it. Every year, I destroy a certain amount of evidence. I've showed you this before because you were on the committee last year. I have to destroy evidence based on a prescribed records retention process that's in the state law about evidence. So let's say I have a piece of evidence, let's say it's a gun, and it was seized in a case where we did a search warrant and the suspect was arrested for armed robbery. Well, that gun, based on that crime that he committed, has a records retention that we have to keep the police report for a certain amount of time, but we also have to keep the evidence for a certain amount of time. And after we keep the evidence at a certain amount of time, we have to destroy it. There's different ways to destroy. You can give it back if it's not contraband, or we can burn it. That's what we do. We burn most of the stuff. So last year, so every year when I'm doing this destruction process, that's actually an audit too, if you think about it, because we're going through the whole evidence room, and it's all these documents and piece of evidence that we have to destroy. So we basically do a wall-to-wall audit every year of everything in the room. We count it all, and we take out the stuff we're supposed to destroy, box it up, write a report about it. I give it to him, and last year it was like 3,500 items that we destroyed. We take it up to the big incinerator in Brooks, and we video them taking it up the elevator and drop it into the big fire bin up there. So we do that every year. So on top of our regular audits, we do a destruction of evidence that also includes basically a wall-to-wall audit. So I write a report about that, and that goes into the system. So when they're reviewing our evidence process, they see the inspections, they see the wall-to-wall audit, they see the surprise audit by the other agency, and they see these physical reports that people write to show that, we're doing these audits. Does that make sense? So I actually brought the computer to show you guys this time what it actually looks like, so you can see, because I'm coming up right now on our review. So for 3 years, we've captured these documents. So every time, because once you get the accreditation in your head and you know what you have to collect, as you go along, if an officer in the morning comes in and we're doing briefing, he says, yeah, I got a pursuit last night, and Benton County employed spike strips on the car, and that's it. We blew his tires out. Well, there's a thing in there about that. So I say, what's the case number on that? So we'll write the case number down, and I'll go and I'll pull when the report's done, I'll pull it, and now that it's electronic, it used to be I'd make a copy of the report and put it in a file. Now I can drag it into my file, put it in the system. So 2 years from now, when I've got the review, I don't have to go try to find in the system reports that have all these different, and there's hundreds of them. I'm giving you just kind of an overview of like use of force. But I think so far I've put 400 or 500 police reports in the system for just the last 3 years, 2020, 2021, and 2022. So at the end of this year, we lock this system, and then the reviewers, until we don't have a review date, but let's say it's February 10th, they'll have from the end of the year till our review date to go in and physically look at each one. And then when they do, there's an electronic marker that they've approved each section as they go. And then once that's approved, then they set up our on-site visit where they come out and they take, every year they have surprise things that they grill you on. They'll come out and they'll say, okay, here's the 5 things we're gonna do in person. We're gonna look at your use of force reports. We're gonna look at your evidence room, entry logs. We're gonna look at how you do vehicle surveillance and what your protocols are on that, how you tow vehicles, and what the equipment, your gun inventory is, to make sure all your guns are inventory properly. So at the beginning, when they show up, we don't know what those things are going to be. So they show up and they do these things. Plus, they go over some other items, and they also interview the officers. So I can't make stuff up. they'll pull a report out and they'll go to the officer. Hey, do you remember writing this report about this use of force? And they could come over. The very first time they came over here. Sometimes they'll come talk to the city because one of the sections is hiring. I mean, there's a whole section on when we hire. How do we advertise? Where do we advertise? I have to put copies of advertisements, the flyers, the dates and times that it was posted online, who our applicants were, their test scores. That's all part of the process too, to make sure that we're doing it the way that the state prescribes through DPSST, how we hire an officer. And the background, copy of a background goes in there and to show that we did a background on our new hire, that they passed the test for it to get onto the secret systems that we have and all that kind of stuff. So that's all part of it. So hopefully, if this works right, I need to share the screen and hopefully it'll be there. Let me get out of here first. Okay, so now I need to open the screen, right? Oops, there it is. I'll bring up this. Share screen. There it is. Okay, share. Hey, can you see that, Matt? Okay, give me a thumbs up. That means you can see it.
We're good.
Okay, so I'll bring up use of force. I brought that up just so it would be easy. Can I minimize this to get this out of here? This stuff at the top,
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not top. You can minimize.
I guess it doesn't matter.
You
Okay.
can minimize that.
So what you're seeing here is Power DMS. It's a system that and you're not seeing the left side of the screen here, but I'll kind of go basically on the left-hand side of the screen, Matt, if you can see it, it's kind of cut off, is what our standards for Oregon are.
Right.
The law enforcement, some documents that are required to be in here, which are oath of office, code of ethics, our policy manual, our section limits authority, constitutional requirements, and stuff like that. What I've done is I've brought up the standards for use of force that you see here in the middle of the screen. So these are those standards I talked about that are set by the Oregon Accreditation Alliance. So for just there's a bunch of use of force ones. As you see on the left, there's use of force, deadly use of force. Let me bring this down. Use of firearms proficiency, less lethal weapons, all different use of force reporting, officer involved shootings, and deploying chemical agents. I'm just looking at just the use of force, and I can bring up anything you guys want, but let me just show you how this works. So when you bring up the use of force, these are the standards that I'm required to prove that we do. There's 4 of them. A written directive governs the use of force by agency personnel and requires that the force used is reasonable and appears necessary, blah, 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 justified under applicable state law, limited to the degree and duration which the officer reasonably believes necessary to accomplish the objective, and applied by the officer and reviewed by the agency based upon those circumstances, stuff like that. So over here on the right-hand side are what they call the proofs. So first of all, each one of these proofs is our policy. Hopefully this will work when I click it. Right here it says this is our use of force policy, and these are the bullets that match the directives standards on the left. So I'm going to click one. It just brought up our policy. I'll just scan up and show you. This is our use of force policy. It brings up our policy that's embedded in there. By the way, this is Power DMS. I'm trying to show you how great the system is. So bullet 1, which you can see it's highlighted because I highlighted it when I first started. I attached this bullet, and if you click on the bullet, I already did, but let's go to bullet B. Bullet B is the use of force justification. So the first section of the use of force standard is that we have policies that govern the section of use of force. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I have to prove that part, and I prove it by highlighting the fact that we have a policy, and each section therein, for bullet C, here's the use of force. Officer shall, I'm trying, it's really small for me. Officer shall use only that amount of force that reasonably appears necessary given the facts and circumstances perceived by the officer at the time of the event to accomplish a legitimate law enforcement purpose. So I have to show that each one of those sections under the standard that I have a policy for it and a specific section in the policy that addresses it. Then I have to use actual police reports or other proofs to prove that an officer did that. So here's one, here's bullets A through D, use of force report. This is actual, not a police report, but a use of force report, filled out, I'll show you here in a second. It's less lethal use of force. And, let me skip, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Let me get out and go back. So this is an actual proof of a less lethal use of force. It's really small for me, but can you guys see it? It's here's the crime, reckless driving, it was the pursuit. Here's the suspect's name. This is actual a separate report than our police report that shows that the officer used a taser on somebody. So this report is loaded in here. And parts of the police report of when the person was booked is actually scanned into the system here to show that the officer wrote a report on that exact incident. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Here's another one. Here's a physical takedown, a police report. And inside the report, oops, I could click it and it'll take me to the section where it says, I can't read it, it's really small, but it's actually the police report where the officer is explaining why they did a physical takedown on a suspect. It's down here under this, in this yellow section down here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. It's really small here, Matt, but I'm just
I can't read that yellow part, but everything else is good.
Yeah, I'm just kind of giving you an idea what the system does. So then here's another section. This is section A through D. It's another one. This is the taser deployment. There's another separate police report that the accreditor can actually get the actual police report and print it and see the actual case number, which is behind all these letters popping up on the bottom of the screen there. But that actually shows that there's actual police report. Then if we can't meet a standard, sometimes we just don't physically come in contact with what the standard is. And in this one, it says the Philomath Police Department did not deploy a canine, because one of the standards is if you deploy a canine, you have to report it. The Philomath Police Department did not deploy a canine, nor did any other police agency deploy a canine on a PPD case during the rating period. I have to put a note if we do not, any of our operations didn't apply to a standard. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's an example of use of force. Then you guys want to look at one that, just for fun, let's see, fiscal management. Here's cash funds. I'll just bring this up, just kind of give you an idea. So here's a written directive, establish procedures for the maintenance of all cash funds or accounts where agency personnel receive, maintain, or disperse cash, and includes at a minimum the following: an accounting system, receipts, identification, all this stuff. So I had to show that I have a policy, and here's the policy, our cash management policy, cash handling, security and management. We actually have a policy on that. And here's bullet A and C, bullet B and D, and bullet E. Shows how we handle cash, how we do audits. Here is, excuse me, here's a proof. It's a credit card statement. So it shows our credit card statement that shows what different people used on credit cards on a particular month. So I put that in there as a proof. Here is the actual audit, city financial audit report. So I actually included the city's financial audit from last year that shows that we properly managed our cash drawer and everything that's in this report. Cash receipt report. This is the actual, every year we have a cash receipt process that every month we do a little audit and it gets put in a system, and this is a copy of it. And then here is the police cash box audit. Hopefully it'll come up. Looks like it's gonna delay here for a second. There it is. So here's how much money. So every month, somebody from over here in the city comes over to our cash box and counts the money in the cash drawer and does a little audit and then signs it. And Jan Boggs did it, count clerk, on May 3rd, 2022. So these are just examples of every one of those standards. I think there's 223 of them. We have to show these different levels of proof for every single thing we do throughout the year, throughout the 3 years.
Can you scroll on that far left column just to see some of those things?
Sure, you bet.
Slowly.
Yeah, you bet. Let me go to the top. So this is the law enforcement role and authority section. It's an oath of office, code of ethics, public safety certifications for the officers, our policy manual, limits of authority, constitutional requirements. Oops. You're not seeing all. Let me see if I can drag it a little bit far. No, that's as far as it goes on this screen. Sorry.
Sorry.
Search and seizure law, arrests, temporary custody, bias policing. That's a hot topic. You want to look at that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is bias-based policing. It's basically, it says a written directive addresses prohibited profiling and bias-based policing on any member of the agency. Policies shall include at least the following. So here's our policy right here. Personnel complaint policy, personal complaints, sections about profiling. If somebody claims profiling, what the complaint process is. There's a section on supervisory responsibilities if that happens. And by the way, these are all answering these standards here that I told you. Procedures for submitting an annual profiling complaint. So what, as our proofs, oops, I keep pushing it wrong. So we've got fat fingers here. Okay, so here's bullet H, which is our policy. So here is our bias training transcripts of showing everybody that's been through bias training. These are the state training records that are sideways, but this just shows every officer and how many hours of bias training they had the previous 3 years. And then here is a transcript for Officer Sinclair. Here is each officer's, I got them all loaded in here. Each officer, so you can see Bowers training transcript. Here is Officer Thurman's. Here's Officer Coons. You're just not seeing them down here. They're down here below. So it shows everybody's training that they've had. And then I wrote this little thing. During the current accreditation assessment period, no complaints were filed against any officer or employee of the Philomath Police Department regarding profiling or bias policing. If we did, we would include the complaint and everything that happened from it in this documentation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But if we don't, then I have to write a little thing that says we didn't. So what else? Arrest, detention, use of force. Here, let me just find another hot topic for you. How about pursuits? Let me see here. Public. I mean, I didn't open them all. There's tons of them.
And who handles firearms proficiency in the department?
Well, we have 3 range masters, me, Mark Kepi, and Jacob Kuhn.
Okay.
So I'm the master of the whole thing. If there's a lawsuit, it's on me. And then both of the 2 guys are employed by me, and they have been through 40 hours of certified training plus the years that they've done it.
Right.
So when we run a range, we have a range master, and that range master does all the training that day. And then Mark does all the documentation, and then we report everything. I report everything to DPS. Every minute that we are at the range, we have to report our training hours and what we did that day to them on a form that we fill out and send in. Let's see if I can show you. Got examples in here. Yeah, this thing just doesn't work very well on this. There you go. Let's see, where's firearms?
Proficiency,
Right there. Okay. So of course we have policies on that, but here's firearms. Here's like officer. I have to show that we all have. Here's his completion of his instructor certification, just like I just said. Here's use of force training. This is a report, a copy of a report that we send in. See this on this particular day. These officers here attended training for an hour and a half on a particular day. And this report goes to DPSST, and they keep a file, electronic file. Did you guys know you can log into DPS? Like you can log into DPSST and look at me and see every hour of training I've ever had over my whole career. So
That's public knowledge?
it's all public records, yeah. So let's see, that's another, this is, maybe go down a little farther. So then one of the sections is, was there any remedial? And then I wrote bullet B, there were no remedial firearms training issues or memos during the accreditation period. So let's say if officer goes out to the next range and doesn't qualify, we have to write a report. And if they don't qualify right away, we have to have them back out the next day. If they don't qualify, we have to suspend them until they go through a particular training and requalify. So quarterly, we're required to go to the range. We're only required, which is terrible, I think. The state only requires once a year that we qualify, but we qualify anywhere between 6 and 10 times a year.
Oh.
So we kind of go overboard on that, which is important, I think.
Yeah.
So anything else? I'm just trying to give you an overview,
Yeah.
but a little bit more in depth of how in depth the actual proofs are for each standard. So each one of these, obviously, sections has multiple standards for all kinds of different things. search and seizure. Man, I don't know why it does that. Custodies of different things, detention, firearms, use of force, officer involved shootings, section 4 here. Chain of command, ops, supervisor accountability. There's like copies of all, people, everybody's performance evaluations are every year in here. Any written directives that we have. Let's see what else. Yeah, it's just terrible how it does that on this laptop. Conditions of work, personnel files, workplace harassment. A lot of this stuff is training. Like we're required by state law to have training in certain areas, and then we put that in here to show that, to track that we've trained on that issue. Any questions? I just wanted to at least show you, because I've talked about it so many times, of what the actual physical thing looks like that I have to do. And it's a lot of the paper version that I did in years past would probably take 6 to 8 months to compile. And that's just compile over time, because I'm gathering these documents as we go over the 3 years. So we got this electronic system at the beginning of the year, and I started adding documents into it in February, and I'm pretty much done. I've only got one. I did today. Today I was at, let's get this to roll down here. Today I'm at the very end. I'm halfway through evidence. So I just did scene, on this one, I just did this one. And I'll give you an example. I just did this one. So this is collection and preservation of evidence. So here's the directive. And then they also, as part of this, they give us a manual and the recommended proofs for each standard. And in this one, the recommended proofs were the Philomath Police Department to show that we have the right forms to book evidence into the system. Here's a report, a police report showing that we seized something from somebody. Here's a document that says that we entered the stuff into the Oregon State crime computer and then it assigned barcodes to the different pieces of evidence. So those are the 4 items I put in today on how do we enter evidence into the Oregon State Crime Lab computer. So just to give you that. So that's where I'm at. I've only got these like 7 more sections to go, then I'm done.
Wow.
At least for the documents.
Right, that's very cool.
So any questions about, Catherine hasn't heard me talk much about this. I'll bring up accreditation every once in a while, and you kind of hear it, don't know what it means. You'll see it more, and you guys are welcome to come when they have the on-site review too. You guys are part of the committee. It'll probably be in February or March next year, where they come and they interview a bunch of different people and they go through the whole system for us. And then at the end of that, if we comply, they'll write a report. Our last report it's on the webpage if you want to read it. It basically goes through every one of these sections and say if we comply or not, or if there's improvement needed in a particular section or not. And last time, I think the only thing that we got dinged on was we don't have a jail in our office. We have a little holding room and if let's say we have a runaway juvenile, we're not allowed to put them in there, okay, at all. They can only go in the lobby.
Right.
And we didn't have a policy to say that.
Oh.
We had a policy on temporary detentions, but we didn't have a policy that says they can't go in because it's not a jail, but it looks like a jail.
Right.
And if we close the door, we can lock somebody in there.
Right.
So, I mean, some little, even minor like that, they wrote, oh, you got this room in here that could be construed as a jail. If you have a juvenile in this building, they can't go in there. And so we had to add a section to our policy that stated that. So that's how in depth they get on the different policies and our procedures. So
I think in the past when I've gotten the letter from the agent once everything's completed, I don't know if we've included that in the council packets or if we've just thrown on the website or what we've.
Yeah, I think I just mentioned it at city council meetings, but then we're required if we are part of the organ to post it. So it's actually on the website under the police section. The last report is in there. So if you need some bedtime reading, it's a great place to find something. So, but I wanted you guys to know this because this is a good example. So let's say a citizen ask you guys, hey, the police department, they're a bunch of jerks. We think they're seizing evidence wrong. I'm just making stuff up as I'm talking. You could come to me and I can actually, if you wanted to, I can bring this up, show you the compliance documents, show you an actual police report, show you that they did an inspection on seizure prep, that we've done inspections that, and they've determined based on their review that everything that we've seized is applicable to state and federal law. I mean, the documents are in there. You can actually go in there and look at it. So that's the best thing about this electronic system for me, that I sold it for me to get it, because it's part of we pay $1,000 a year for the accreditation system, and through Power DMS is the company, we get the system, which is $1,500 a year to buy it, but because we're a part of it, we pay $500. So for $1,500, that's what our accreditation program physically costs us. Most agencies employ a full-time person to do it. I am it, so it's part of my duties to enter all this stuff and do it as we go. So there is a non-quantifiable cost to it because it's my time. But like I've told everybody in the past, I know this sounds corny, but I think doing this over and over again all the time for me, number one, it keeps me sharp on what we're supposed to be doing. I think it's really important. Number two, it keeps our policy products right at the tip of the spear. I mean, all of our policies that we have are up to date, they're reviewed, they're part of the system, and they're approved by the accreditation board and by DOJ. So I'm always confident that the policies that we have for that day, because they change all the time, because we get outside requirements, right, from the legislature, from DPSST to change them. They're on time, and we're not going to get sued. The city's not going to get sued because we're not following a policy properly, or that we don't have the proper language in a policy. So for policy management for a police agency is incredibly important. And most agencies like Corvallis PD, they have 2 full-time people all the time. That's all they do. They have an accreditation manager and they have a policy lieutenant. That's all they do, all full-time. So we don't have that, but we have this, and this is, I think, really advantageous to small agencies. So that's why I think it's really important for us. So that's accreditation, a little bit more in depth than what you've heard from me before, just to kind of understand what the document requirements are and the proof requirements are. Do you guys have any questions about it?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
Like a month or so ago, we got a cranky email from someone from Springfield who was given a ticket for going 47 through downtown. Right. Would that show up in this system somewhere?
If I chose to put it in there, complaints are weird. I have a file on all of our complaints, so I'll start off with that. If it's a complaint where somebody makes a complaint and then when we talk to them, they decided it's not a complaint anymore because we have a video that what they say didn't happen, and that's what happened in that, then it's not really a complaint anymore by our policy and by the state standards. So that particular, we've only had that one, that's it. So that doesn't really fall into the formal complaint. The one that was even closer was the one, same situation where the lady maybe made the claim that Officer Walk came in her house on it, never walked around, forced his way in. And then the husband came and we showed him the video. I mean, the whole thing was on video. And then he's all, no, we don't want to do the formal complaint. So it didn't really become did you hear about that? So a lady wrote this letter, a complaint letter, saying that an officer showed up at her house, came in the front door without knocking, walked around, yelled at her, ordered her to do some things, and then forced his way to the back of the house. Talk to the husband. Well, what really happened was we got a call there, and officers from the family saying that she was beating up on the husband, which she was later on. We arrested her, not at this time, and that we want to make sure that the husband's okay. So Mike goes out there, knocks on the door. It's all the beauty of the video is it's all in the video. Knocks on the door. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, could I help you? Yeah. Can I come in? Sure, come on in. She invites him in. She's cooking dinner. What are you cooking for dinner? It was like he couldn't be nicer to her. What are you cooking? Oh, I got this stuff. Oh, it smells so good. I'm really hungry. Can I talk to your husband for a second? Yeah, he's back. Goes back, talks to him, comes back. Oh, have a nice day. Okay. Well, she writes this letter saying that he did all this stuff. She calls him a Nazi in the letter. So, I call her. I said, hey, look, you wrote this letter. I've looked at the video. I think you should come down here. And, you know,
And-
and do you want to tell the truth there?
Yeah.
And bring a pen to write an apology to my officer for making this false claim. Because actually it's a crime. She accused him of committing a burglary, right?
Right.
Okay, so we invited the husband down and we let him watch the video. And he goes, yeah, I was there. And I'm really sorry. He starts watching the video. He goes like this. He goes, oh my God. He just shakes his head. So that's one of those situations, Matt, that it's not a formal complaint. So that wouldn't be in here. But we are required to keep a log of anything. So even these ones that don't turn out, we have a file that's reviewable by anybody, by you guys, anybody that wants, of anybody that's come in and even made a claim, any kind of, I don't even know what you want to call it, a false complaint. We still have to make sure that they are false if it's something really weird like these two, like we talked about. So unless it's a formal complaint, which is a written complaint, and we do a full investigation, which we haven't had one in a long time, that would go in here, and that's it for a complaint. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep. Thanks.
You bet. But we do have a file, and I tell him any of these things oversight's important. We do this for a reason, to have all this stuff, so it keeps the city from being negligent on oversight, and that's incredibly important. So you guys as a committee, you're not an oversight committee, but I always tell you guys, hey, there's nothing wrong with you guys asking these questions. And if you want to see a file anytime, I'll be willing to, like, I'll show you guys the evidence room. I'll show you how we track evidence. Catherine hasn't seen it. She hasn't been on the committee very long, but when we're over there, if you guys ever want to see any of this stuff or the actual hard copies of any of these documents, let me know. I'll be glad to show them to you. So what else?
Thank you.
Matt?
I'm good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when there are legislative changes,
Right.
how is the training handled on any legislative type changes
Yeah,
that affect the
usually
police
there's a
department?
time frame, because obviously if they put okay, let's use a real example. Less lethal.
Mhm.
Probably 3 or 4 years ago, there was some legislation that said that we're required to have a less lethal option, and usually multiple less lethal options, as opposed to a deadly force situation. So less lethal could be a taser, it could be OC spray, it could be a shotgun that shoots a beanbag round. Well, recently that's been changed, and there was some legislation that there's been a lot of lawsuits on the beanbags. So a lot of agencies switched over. It wasn't a mandate, but there was a recommendation from the legislature to come up with some kind of different, less lethal. And so they came out with this kind of a rifle that shoots a rubber pellet, a really soft rubber pellet. It hurts when it hits you, so they put this thing out and they say within a year, they'll make a statement like within 1 year, agencies should have these things and the officers shall be trained if they're going to use them. So what we typically do in those situations is they give you a time frame, because there's no way they can implement it immediately, because you won't have to be able to get the equipment and do the training required, right? So they'll give you a 1 year or 2 years. In the last 5 or 6 years, which is great, they have staggered these requirements based on their agency size. Bigger agencies are required to do it faster because they have the money to do it. Smaller agencies are usually, you get a little bit more time. For instance, I don't know if you guys know, you're required to be accredited now if you're an agency over certain sizes. Well, they put that out by size, but it was the opposite. So large agencies are required to go right now. They have to be. So we just signed up in the Oregon Accreditation Alliance. Believe it or not, Portland Police Bureau is not an accredited police agency. They don't have they have a oversight board, but they don't have an accreditation and a standards review program at all at Portland Police Bureau. So they just signed the agreement with OAA this morning. So they're going to be part of our program. I think there's about 110 out of the 220 agencies in Oregon. I think there's about 100 that are accredited right now, close to 100.
Mhm.
So getting back to your question on that, you have to provide the training. So for our thing, we had a year, probably 5 months into it, we found, because of all the other stuff going on in the world, we couldn't get the rifles.
Mhm.
They're just not really a rifle. They're this weird kind of it looks like a Nerf gun. I don't have any better way to describe it. And we had to have training. So luckily Benton County had sent 2 of their people to train the trainer. And then we asked them, hey, when you have time. So was it last Tuesday, Wednesday, early last week, we had our first, we haven't started carrying the gun. We have until the end of this year, but we've had the training. We've got the guns on order. We have a loaner. And when we get the guns, then the guys can have them in the car. So they give us a year time frame. Usually there's a year. Sometimes, like during the police, all the police have it going on a couple years ago when there was a bunch of changes made, the governor says immediately. So when they say immediately, there's no way you can do it immediately. But for instance, we had to develop a policy that requires an officer, if they see, because of the George Floyd thing, if they see another officer acting with misconduct, they're required to report it. So we had to come up. So the beauty of the Oregon Accreditation Alliance is we met immediately, and we crafted language in a standard that required agencies to have a policy that their officers would have to abide by in their policy manual that complied with this state law. But we got that out within about a week, but even though it was immediate, there's no way you can comply sometimes with an immediate order. But we got the policy, we got the draft policy out within a week. And then of course, agencies have to adopt the policy and go through the process and then train it. So I think we were done here within about a month by the time we got it in our policy manual. And then we had to provide training on that new section to all the officers, and they have to sign off that they received the training. So just depends on what the legislation is, but usually they give us a little time to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
What else?
So,
I have one more for you.
She said so before you said something.
no, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Catherine.
So if you're on vacation for 3 weeks, who manages this portfolio for you? No one. So
We're
you're
small.
okay. So then transition plan someday when you retire at 100 and you're no longer here.
Yeah.
Do you have somebody that you're training or bringing on board?
I have a
with this
succession
stuff?
plan, and I mean, I really like Dave Gursky to be the next chief, but he's still got to go through the process and
Right.
learn it all and apply and just like we did when I came here.
So the question was more to the point of who
Yeah,
else,
you
who
bet.
else is learning that
Yeah.
system?
Dave knows the system, and I think if you told him to enter some documents in there, he's messed around with it enough to do it. But not to get, there's a lot of stuff I didn't show you. Like, so when I enter a document in there, I have to save it, and then I put in there the date and time of the compliance, and then I make a judgment that if the whole section is done, that we feel, and I certify that I believe that our agency is in compliance with section 2.3. And I have a little certification process in the system, and then basically I can reopen it, but it locks it, and then it stores all the documents in there. And once I do that, the reviewers, they could come on anytime they want and do periodic reviews. So once I close my little section, they can come on and look. And that's why you say that I think I'm in compliance with the evidence section that I just did. So once I close it and I mark complied, they can come on and look at all the sections that I've closed, which is everything till where I showed you today, and review. And then the nice thing about that is if they don't like one of the documents they put in, they can send us a note. Oh, I know you're in compliance in section 2.8, but can you find a better police report that, signifies how officer did this pursuit? Sure. Then I'd go try to find another one and give a better example of how we complied with the standard. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I did that for Benton County. I would go on their site. They were changing their accreditation manager, and they gave me their login, and I go in every once in a while and I would look at some of their proofs and say, this isn't very good. You need to, it'd be better if you had this, because the reviewer is going to want to see these facts or something like that. So I can go through and look. But does that kind of answer your question roundabout? Matt?
Well, I have an unrelated question.
Okay, go ahead.
So recently I was participating with the League of Oregon Cities General Governance Committee, and there was a lot of complaints from different cities around the state about the Measure 110 situation. And I was just wondering how much of an impact that has had on your day-to-day operations.
I'll answer it 2 ways. Operationally, it's hard to say. I think it's really taking a lot of we are not making nearly the amount of arrests for drugs that we did before because we can't. I've described to you guys before. What 110 did that a lot of people don't know, it took away our probable cause to search for drugs, because drug possession in small amounts is not a crime anymore. And you can only search incident to an investigation if you're investigating a crime. If somebody's got a small baggie of heroin, which a year ago was a felony, now it's the same ticket you would get for parking illegally at the fair, which I'm not joking. That's exactly what it is, an E violation, which I still can't get my head wrapped, regardless of where you are on the political scale. I've been doing this job for 38 years. I just can't get if you were to tell me 20 years ago that possession of heroin in a small amount, regardless of how small, is not a crime, I just can't get my head. So I'm sorry, I'm just still struggling with that. But
Sure.
But what it does is, because it's not a crime, we can only conduct searches and seizures on criminal investigations. It's not a crime anymore. It's only a violation, like a speeding ticket. So I can't say, oh, there's that whatever there, come out and get out of the car, and then I could search for that and then search the surrounding area for more of it. Because that's not part of the repertoire anymore, we can't do it. So our drug arrests are probably down 90%. So
Wow.
Operationally, it's a big deal. But like I've told you guys before, what is gone up? DUIs skyrocket. We broke the all-time record last year by quadruple, I think. We're already over. We're going to be over that this year if it keeps going. I think we're at 20. What are we in June? We're going to be over. We'll be close to 60. Last year was 53. And that was our all-time record. And almost every one of them, except for one or two this year, already has been drugs, not alcohol. So social impact, huge. And that's just not from the police side. That's from the treatment side. And you can talk to the treatment people. There's no lever to get anybody into treatment anymore.
Right.
All the treatment groups, as a matter of fact, if you want to watch, she will if she's logged in. Tomorrow we're having the harm reduction supervisor for Good Samaritan Hospital speak at WCJC, and they're struggling with, they can't get people into treatment because drug courts and municipal court judges like ours are the ones that got people into treatment by the lever of, hey, we're going to prosecute you unless you get into treatment. So now it's not a crime anymore, and the fine is $25 if you don't comply. So I think in a couple of years we're going to look back and say this is an absolute disaster. I mean, crime, and luckily not here, but in Corvallis and other places, is especially property crime. To feed these habits, I mean, like I've said before, as a police officer, a lot of people won't believe you hear this from a cop, but what cops want is people getting fixed. However you get them there. But if you don't have some kind of a legal lever to get somebody into treatment, I'm not talking show up and get treatment once a week. I'm talking inpatient. It's expensive, but let's put our money where our mouth is. If we're going to do this and spend some money and get people into treatment, and that's not happening.
Right.
The treatment.
That was the major complaint, that no one is taking advantage of the treatment options. And
no, because there's no lever, right? There's no carrot and stick situation. It's all voluntary, and I almost said the bad guys. The subjects involved in these things know that they don't have to comply. We're not going to go rearrest somebody for failure to appear on a ticket, and when we can't even arrest them for the possession of drugs in the first place, right? I mean, it's silly. It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox, Matt, but society-wise, I think it's a huge impact, and we're seeing kids in the school. I think there's a big impact in the schools. We're seeing more and more interactions with kids that are using in school and being under the influence. And being influenced, that we're coming in contact with younger kids that abuse, and it's not illegal for a kid to be under the influence of drugs. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, and budgetarily, I don't know that the marijuana money that was coming this way, we weren't receiving a ton of money to begin with. We don't have a bunch of dispensaries in town. I don't remember the exact numbers. I think it was 30,000 or something like that, maybe 40,000. And so that's dropped. So we are seeing a budget impact, but that's not directly affecting the police department. It's, we've been, as we've been adding to our ending fund carryover every year. So that's what's happened, just that extra 20,000 or 30,000 didn't get carried over last year. But it's not been a reduction in the police department budget by any means. That's stayed where it's at and come up. So it's not impacted the budget. It's not impacted day-to-day ability to do police work. It's really been more the social issues that can point it out.
And do those people get put into the system at all anymore?
No. So, well,
I
yes
mean, it's
and no.
just like a traffic ticket, right?
Okay,
I
so
mean,
let's say we walk up. I could give you 12 examples, give a combination of an example, but let's say I walk up, Catherine's in the car, and on her knee is a baggie of meth. And I say, hey, that's a violation. Give me the baggie. So there's absolutely zero reason if I'm in that car to give you that baggie, right? What if I say no? The officer I can't reach in there and get it. It's not a crime. I can't write you the ticket because I don't have evidence of the violation in the car, right? So this is weird.
right.
I think this is one of those great examples that the right people weren't at the table when they crafted this thing. And I could place a lot of blame in a lot of places. We could talk about that off the air, but nobody looked downstream of all the outside impact of this whole thing. Because the minute they turned it into a violation, then that takes all of our authority away as a society to do anything about it. When you say put somebody in a system, that we can write a report, it doesn't do anything to document what we did. Oh, we saw this baggie on her knee. We asked her for it. She said no. I can't use that against her. It's not a crime. So
Right.
we don't even write a police report about that. And we can't issue a ticket because we don't have the item. So now it's like pursuits. People know that most agencies are not going to chase you. So what's going on? I don't know if you guys saw the article, I think it was the Oregonian, about what state of Washington. Nobody stops anymore. And these people just take off. They're going 100 miles an hour, and cops, bad stuff happens. And bad stuff happens when cops chase too. So you can have either side of the argument, but when bad guys know they don't have to stop anymore, that changes everything. There's absolutely zero, repercussions for somebody that says, F you, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep going. And not stopping for the red lights anymore. So that's becoming really problematic on top of it. And that's all kind of all together. I got drugs in the car, cops behind me. Why should I stop? There's nothing, criminally they can do to me. So they don't. And we probably get 3 or 4. I was thinking, what our average per month is. 6 to 10 where they don't stop right now. Sometimes another agency will stop, and we have an arrest warrant for somebody that they don't know, and we'll get involved, and then we say on the air why we're trying to stop them. It's not just a small thing; it's a big thing, and we'll chase if the right conditions are involved. Us, Benton County, Albany PD, our policy still allows to chase for certain levels of crimes, but OSP, because 99% of the stuff that they do is traffic related, they don't pursue at all. I mean, very rare, unless it's helping another agency on a major crime, like the suspect's wanted for let's say, like a felony assault or a rape case or something like that. Very rarely do they chase. It's just, they just don't do it. So I know that got off the 110 thing, but it all plays into the 110 because there's, drugs are the root of about 90% of our societal evils. And regardless of what your stance is on legalization, people use them. You got your population that's going to use if it's legal or not, and those people need to have the money to buy them, and it's expensive. So it's that kind of a feed, feeding a system, and it's difficult. So yeah, 110's there needs to be some way to alter it. We've made some recommendations from the Chiefs Association so there's something more to it. I like and I brought this up every time we talked about it. I really liked the Chiefs when we found out about this. We proposed, they didn't listen, the legislature, but we proposed to treat possession of certain amounts of drugs just like your first DUI arrest.
Yep.
To me, early intervention makes a lot of sense, especially because a lot of these people we're arresting are young. People are just getting them. I think you want to get these people early, get them in, they get arrested, but the judge sentencing them to a system where they pay a fine, they have to go to classes, and they also have to go to inpatient treatment. And when they get out after 1 year, the rest comes off their record forever. It gets expunged. That to me is a fair way to help somebody get into treatment. And if they decide on their own that they're not going to do that, and then a year goes by, then it's on their record, and then all the regular penalties apply from there on. To me, that makes a lot of sense, because it's going to help people that want the help, and their families want to help, and it's not going to help the people that don't. So.
Well, that's what LOC is going to advocate for too during the next legislative session. So
good.
Who knows if it'll work, but that's what they're going to try.
And we always reach out to them and partner with. I mean, all the cities are obviously affected by these things. The property crime in Oregon is skyrocketing, right? I mean, especially like Corvallis. I want to cast stones on my partners over there, but it's not good. Our crime rate, the last time I looked at the end of last year, is a third of what their crime rate is, which is great. It's not, we've got some wood knocking over there.
That's right.
But it's tough. It's a tough situation, and a lot of it is the drug situation and homelessness and all the things that feed all those problems. So.
Right.
I have another question though.
Yeah.
This was a conversation I had with a neighbor, and she was asking about with the current environment and the tragedy we've had nationwide, is there a response time for like to our public schools from the officers in our town? Is there a goal we set for in response time if an emergency comes up? And is there any kind of mass shooting protocol or policy we have in Philomath?
Yeah, we have all that. The schools all have their policies, and it's great. We don't have a response time like large agencies do because they have districts and different things. We only have Philomath. So our policy is, I'll use the word shoot straight from the hip. That's a little pun. If something happens on duty, our job is it could be me, it could be Dave, whoever's on duty during that day. We have spots at all the schools and where we meet. They're called rally points that are preset. And we go there, and our job, we are in the belief, not like what you saw in Texas. Our belief is we still use this particular training plan where our job is to go kill the bad guy immediately, regardless of what's going on. We don't get into negotiating. Our job is to go in, find the shooter, and kill him. I'm just telling you exactly how it is. That's our all the other stuff that happens at the school is the school handles that, and we know what they're going to do. We've gone to all their drills and all that. We know exactly their protocols. We recommended to them probably 6 or 7 years ago. We went to all the training and we recommend it, and they do an amazing job. It's one of those, and you can have long discussions about this. It's one of those difficult things. How often do you go into the school and try to train with kids? Is that more traumatic than the event, knowing that the events don't happen that often? I think the bottom line is we know what we're going to do. We have the right equipment. When I got here, we didn't have keys to the schools. And I know these sounds like silly things. We do now have keys to every lock at every school. We have electronic keys. All the officers have them. We have the right weapons to handle. We have the right gear to wear. We know where we're going to go. I mean, after this last one, we had a meeting. It's like that kind of thing can't happen. Is everybody comfortable with our protocols where you're going to go in, bad guy's going to shoot at you. Are you able in your head to do what you're required to do? And you don't know what's going to happen until it happens, but I'm pretty confident that our guys are trained properly. He's been out there. I'll put our guys up against there's nobody even close. Our guys are outstanding, tactically trained officers shooting wise. All about shooting with your daughter. We practice a lot and the guys know what to do. But heaven forbid we'll ever have to do it. I mean, it gives me, every time one happens, I have nightmares about what, that it would ever happen here. I'm just praying that it doesn't. But we know where to go. We know where to meet. We know how to get into the schools the right way and from what doors we want to go in. And we have that preset ahead of time. So there's no confusion. If there's a shooting at a particular school, we know where to go or how we're going to get in.
Well, to be clear, you're not doing training with the kids in the school, but you are very familiar with the schools.
Yep.
I mean, they've been in after hours, they've gone through.
We have the best 3-dimensional floor plans of every school that we've looked at. We do walkthroughs of the schools every year. We just walk around and look for places where to hide and where bad guys could hide. but the bottom line is if you do any study of any shooting, and there's a database that we have access to that has every single school shooting active shooter case in it. 99.9% of the shootings happen in two places in the school, the library or the cafeteria. And so we look at that as like you do with anything, like if you're playing a baseball game, you have, you have tendencies and you kind of train for tendencies and then try to adjust. So we know how we're going to enter the schools if any of those schools has a shooter in a cafeteria or the library, and we're going to approach it the way I told you, which is not a nice sounding thing. And when we've met with teachers, we used to have, teachers come to the office and it's like teachers don't want to hear that, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and that's how we're going to respond. I was really sad to see the response at the Texas Tech. I hate the money under quarterback. You don't know what all the facts yet, but from what I've seen so far, that was not the way it's supposed to be done.
And when a new officer comes in, is there a time period where that officer is also trained in this type of?
Yeah,
okay.
especially on big topics like that. If officer first gets here, they're with a training officer. All those topics are discussed immediately. When they go to the schools, they meet the folks at the schools, they walk around, just like anything else. You bet. It's not a great topic to think about.
No.
But
it is more comforting that there is preparation.
Yeah, well, you can become. I don't think there's ever any comfort in any of it. It's just like one of those things. I just hope that we've been confronted with a lot of incidents here and all kinds of calls for service, and we go to help our partners on just about everything you can imagine. Rapes just occurred, shootings just occurred. We've been to hundreds of them myself personally in my career. You don't want to go, but it's just you got to think it so that at least be aware of it so that you're prepared mentally. That if you do, you just kind of act and do it. And I'm hoping, because there's no way to repeatedly train something like that. You just can't do it unless you just were in the school every day and just walk doing it. It's a weird. Oh, how can you prepare? I mean, you really can't.
No.
I know it's kind of a weird thing to say, but
the reality is, as great as a community as Philomath is, and we're not that unique from any other great little community, but rapes happen, murders happen, bad stuff happens all the time. There's abuse and there's, neglect, and all of those things happen. And we have great officers that deal with it every single day and are dealing with those types of things and those types of people. And it's sad.
Yeah. I will add this. I will give you some comfort that we have a great relationship with the schools and excellent communication when the counselors get wind of something funky. If they have a concern about a kid, which we've had, told him, I always brief them on, we meet with the family immediately as quick as we can. We've got the FBI involved with some families in the past where a kid makes a comment or says something to a relative and then that gets passed back to us. And we have protocols that we have an FBI person that we have a contact with immediately. There's out of all the flaws with the FBI, this is not one of them. They come immediately and help interview the kids and meet with the families. And we try to at least intercept an incident before it happens. So we've got a number of those. They're kept very quiet for privacy issues, but we have dealt with 5 or 6 or 7 of those in the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years. So I will tell you, the school does our relationship's great. We don't have an officer over there, which I wish we had money to do, but I think in our town, I think the relationship's good enough to, they call us when
Counselors.
Excellent counselors.
We do.
We are really lucky.
We've got
So
great school
lucky.
counselors.
Super lucky. Well, it's after 5.
All right.
Usually I go an hour, but I want to talk about, unless you guys have anything else on now the map threw us completely off course with the 110 discussion. I just want to, we don't have to talk much about it. I really think we should implement with the city a program to register door-to-door salespeople. And I'll tell you my main reason, then I'll let you guys chew on it and think about it. And if you guys agree with me, we can come up with I gave you the kind of closest thing I can find to a decent policy or a protocol or go by. It's City Redmond. But here's the issue. Right now, because we don't have a policy or a procedure to register people or to have a permit, we have no authority when somebody calls up, I got this guy on my porch and he was really rude to me and I don't want to buy his stuff, but he doesn't want to leave. We don't have any authority or any kind of a legal premise to go out and contact people and tell them, get out of our town, or you can't do business here. You just don't have the authority to do it.
Or even any way to know who it is.
Right, exactly. Or what company it is, or to be able to call their supervisor and say, hey, this person was rude, or even direct a caller to a company or a representative of the company to make a complaint.
Right.
So many cities, and I was just talking to Chelsea, Silverton has one, Corvallis has one. Yeah, a lot of places charge a fee. That's your guys' sound. I don't think we need to do that. I just want to have a system to where if we go out there and somebody calls us, we can go out, contact the person. Hey, did you register at the city? You need to fill out this form. I know it's bureaucracy, but find out what the company is, who the supervisor is, a phone number for a contact person, where they're going to be, what days they're going to be here, what they're selling. And at least we'll have some legal authority to contact these people and to also provide our citizens with some documentation and information that they can use if they feel like they need to make a complaint, or to maybe do a background check themselves on the actual whatever they're selling or the company. Does that make sense?
It does.
So right now we have every summer we get complaints.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys get on that Nextdoor app. I look at it, I don't talk, but I look at it and people, oh, I got this guy coming to my door selling me some, what was it, disinfectant. And is this guy real? Is this a real company? And we've got calls. The guy was rude. He didn't want to get off the porch. I told him to leave. He didn't, we have nothing to go out and demand anything for people, identification, contact, unless they're trespassing.
And I'll just say, I do often get called often, every year, at least once or twice a year. I'll get a call from a business that says, hey, I'm not looking on the website, I'm gonna see where I can register. We're gonna have some representatives in your town to come. I don't see where's the registration, where do I go? Because they're used to having to do this, right? So the legit companies that are, hiring college kids to go out and sell pesticides or do whatever, like there's legit companies.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking to register, right? They want to do it the right way. And I'm just like, yeah, we don't have anything, but I'll take your number if I get any complaints. So, we do that as a courtesy, but there is an expectation for the legit companies that want to do things right. They want to have good customer service. They train their folks, right? And it's just a legit door-to-door salesman type thing. They're looking for this opportunity to be able to register, to let you know who they are, because they want to hold their employees accountable too, right? So, I don't think we're going to put anybody off by having this in place. The biggest thing is having, what's the business, who's the owner, who's the contact person, give me the names of the people there. Because we have had some malicious stuff happen with either actual door-to-door sales or people that, promoted themselves or portrayed themselves as door-to-door salespeople.
Unfortunately, we had a rape case.
We've had what we thought was some casing of homes and that kind of thing. So it's a great cover, if you will, and especially if there's no way to have you register for anything.
So in registering, the policy, personally living here in town, a couple of summers ago, we had someone come in like 10:30 at night.
Yeah, so we can.
So is there a policy say that it had to be done by a certain?
We can do anything we want. Yeah.
Because personally, 10:30 at night, I
Daylight
really don't
hours
have
or-
someone coming to my door at night.
Redmond has time. Yeah.
Yeah.
they have time.
I sent that to you guys just as there's a couple things that we didn't like, but as a general policy, if you take 5 minutes and take a look and just give me your feedback, then maybe the next city can. I'd rather do it
The next committee meeting
next
here.
meeting, or we can just exchange emails. If you have some ideas or don't like it at all, let me know. But I think it'd be a good thing for the city. I think it helps protect people from shady folks that are doing something they're not supposed to do, and it also gives them some ammo to call up a company if they feel that they want to make a complaint or follow up on something. So,
Now, is that something we would issue to them so we would know us at the door that they registered?
that's a good
for
question.
the-
I don't. We can maybe give them a copy of the form,
Yeah,
so when
or
an
something
officer is
Yeah.
out there, oh yeah, here's a copy of my permit or whatever you
Right,
want to call it,
yeah,
or a
that
registration form.
Or
Yeah.
even though the
You bet.
public could know.
Sure.
At 10:30 or whatever, I want to know, are you really legit? Is this?
Right,
Require, give them a little 3x5, we can
Yeah.
require that they display that.
Right.
Sure.
Here's I'm permitted with the city of Philomath, I'm registered with the city of Philomath.
Right,
I'm required to provide you with this. I'm with such and such company, so no, I'm.
I'm registered.
yes.
Write that down.
You're being recorded.
I do like that. I think that's,
Like a little card.
So just time restrictions.
I think so.
Some type of identification the city gives them to show
Yes.
that they're registered. Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing.
I'm just wondering if a policy like this would have made any difference in the rape case or the casing and pumping.
No,
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
but just
I
that
agree. I doubt it. The shady ones are just gonna do it, right? But I'll just add a bogus scenario on. If we saw somebody in town, it gives the officers at least the authority to stop and say, hey, how you doing? Are you selling door to door today? Yeah, what's your name? I don't have to tell you. Yeah, you do. We have a policy.
Right.
Otherwise, I can get you a citation or whatever we want to, however we want to add on to that for selling, unauthorized selling in the city of Philomath or whatever we want to call it.
At one time, were you connecting with some of the home camera?
Yep.
Would that tie into this?
Sure,
So-
you bet. If we had a policy, it allows us to take that next step, whatever it is. If it's somebody that's suspicious, casing, that's what when I read police training things that come out in different cities all over the country that get sent out, it's burglars using that as cover to look for houses to burglarize. But this at least gives us some authority to stop somebody and say, hey, Catherine, what are you doing on the people's porch?
You quit making me.
I'm using an
That's
example.
precedent.
When you ask the question, I'm gonna use an example. I've used Matt on all kinds of bad
Right.
examples already, and same thing with.
Dope user or
Yeah, you literally, you didn't know you were a heroin user, now you know.
That's right.
But it also makes
Street
it,
predator.
Yeah,
yeah, but it also makes sense that they really should leave. If that transaction is over and the person closes the door, they really should leave within a reasonable period of time, your property, I would assume.
yeah, well,
Should they
there's.
not?
So how
Cool.
is that not trespassing just generally if you've got?
Because you have
somebody-
to, for trespassing to
It
be
has to be
a
posted.
crime, you have to, no, you, as a homeowner, you can trespass somebody verbally, but you have to do it. You have to actually have an act of trespassing. It's not inferred by the fact, we were just talking about this. So by state and federal law, you can go anywhere you want as a person on anybody else's property that is not controlled. Okay, so your front yard, I could walk in your
And
front yard.
Controlled means.
Controlled means, you're gonna love this, it's called the mailman or meter reader theory, which was applied like in the 1920s. It says anywhere a mailman or a meter reader can go on your property, generally, anybody else can, including the police. And so I know it sounds like a weird thing, but the part that you can see from the front of your house in your yard, people can approach legally. But if you tell them, if you put a gate, if you put some barrier, a gate and a sign, or a verbal sign or gate, which would be, hey, I don't want you on my property, leave. And if they don't, the minute they don't, it's trespassing. That make sense? So a lot of farms will have a no trespassing signage is, but most judges won't convict you without a verbal warning first, even if you have a sign. It's the same thing with a business. A business actually has in our region, you have to give a written. It's like if you come into somebody's business, they tell you, I want to trespass you, you have to call the police. You have to give a written trespassing order. The schools give written trespassing orders. Not
So
a
if a
verbal.
business is gated entirely, for example, and somebody climbs the gate, that's not actually trespassing? Or
Okay, if
that
it's
is
gated
that
and it's locked,
barrier?
yes.
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 Okay.
I'm talking about like if you have an access gate, you
Yeah.
can walk through. If it's locked and somebody jumps over a fence, like it goes into your backyard, that's trespassing.
Mhm.
I'm talking about the area open to the public, quote unquote.
Sure.
Right? So this is what we would be looking for people that are going door to door and knocking. They're generally going to go. But if you came out on your back step and you saw a guy in your backyard, that's a whole different matter.
The other point on this, if we want to pursue, sounds like there's interest.
Mhm.
I think the other point of this is we'd obviously publicize this, and I think it empowers homeowners as well. Because now if you know that somebody shows up at your door, they're supposed to have
Right.
a card issued to them, or they're supposed to only be there from 8 to 7 or whatever, or they're supposed to be registered. That's an easy first question. Are you registered with the city? And if they're like, oh, what? Then it's like,
I don't, and I want to bring this one thing up. I don't know if there's language in it. And I can't remember if there is. There wasn't some of them. I think it's important that you guys think about this part. You don't want whatever form we're going to give the person the belief that we're vouching for them,
Right, correct.
right? Just because they have a permit or a card,
So your messaging.
right, exactly. So we just need to be careful with that. So the person says, oh, I'm registered with the city, my product's great, they'll tell you, whatever. We're not vouching for their product or them. We're just registering them so they can sell their product in our city. That make sense?
Mhm,
So
absolutely.
give it some thought, and if you
Yeah.
guys want to shoot me an email or any thoughts about, hey, I don't like this at all, parts of it, or you like something, let me know, and I've got a couple more examples over there that I've kept that have some pretty good language, and the copy I gave you, he excised some stuff off that we didn't like, and so if you think of something, let us know.
And this is a good, perfect time of year to.
Yeah, because this
Yes,
is
in
where it's
order.
gonna start, it's
Yeah.
summer and into the fall,
Mhm.
and we're not talking about, see, this is another thing, he brought this up, and I think you should guys think about some language. I'm not talking about the high school kids selling Christmas wrapping paper,
Right.
or like you were saying, the census people.
Right.
So we're gonna have to, if it is, I think the school can do it. If it's like a school-wide thing, maybe the school can call and
Yes, but
register.
it's exclusions.
like
We
that.
have certain exclusions.
So,
Public school.
yeah, whatever. You know, we're not talking about people passing out religious pamphlets or things about an event. We're talking about people selling things.
Yeah, the Redmond one's pretty clear that
Yeah,
It's
only
it is.
applies to
Solicitation.
solicitation for sale of goods or services.
That's pretty clear. Well, good. If there is nothing else,
You guys, anything?
Council Lehman, anything further? If
Nope,
not,
I'm good.
Great.
all right. If not, we are adjourn this meeting. Adjourned.
Great seeing you guys in person.
Hey.
It's kind of nice for a change, huh?
Strange.
Appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you.
Good seeing you,
See you
Catherine.
tomorrow.
Nice to see you. Yeah, I will be there. My last one as the chair.
That's right, so Zan will be the new chair, is that right? Like, it's already